The desperate signal, the last transmission from Zelaria, primed the crystal spires of Zelaria Prime, flickered like dying stars against the darkness that consumed their sky. Commander Zethka pressed his translucent hand against the command center's viewing portal, watching as another section of his homeworld fell to the spreading shadow. The Void Swarm had arrived 3 cycles ago, and already half their world was gone. Commander, the energy reserves in Sector 7 have dropped to critical levels, reported Communications Officer Lythen, her voice carrying the harmonic tones that made Zelari's speech sound like singing crystal. The evacuation centers there have gone silent. Zethka's crystalline form dimmed with sorrow. Each silent sector meant thousands of his people had been consumed by the creatures that fed on life force itself. The Void Swarm was unlike any enemy the peaceful Zelari had ever faced. They were not soldiers or conquerors seeking territory or resources. They were parasites that drained the very essence of living worlds, leaving behind empty husks drifting in space. How long until they reached the central spire? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. At their current rate of spread, 18 standard hours, replied Science Advisor Crinmoth, her usually bright crystal form now dull with exhaustion. Perhaps less if they adapt further to our energy frequencies. Zethka moved to the communication array that occupied the center of their command chamber. The device was a masterwork of Zelari technology, capable of sending signals across vast distances using their unique crystal resonance. It had been built for peaceful contact with other worlds, sharing knowledge and fostering understanding between different species. Now it would transmit their final desperate cry for help. Prepare the emergency broadcast array, he commanded. Send the signal on all frequencies, in every language pattern we have recorded. Lythen's hands danced across the crystal controls, her movements creating musical notes that activated the communication system. Ready for transmission, Commander. Zethka stepped before the primary crystal, its surface beginning to glow as it prepared to carry his words across the galaxy. He thought of all the civilizations that might receive this message. The proud Altarian Empire, with their vast fleets. The ancient vegan consortium, with their advanced technology. The wise Centauri Council, with their diplomatic solutions to every problem. All of them had ignored previous requests for assistance. The mathematics were simple and cold. The cost of fighting the Void Swarm outweighed the benefit of saving one crystal world on the galaxy's edge. Zelaria Prime was expendable in the grand calculations of civilized space, but perhaps somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, someone would listen. Someone would care. This is Commander Zethka of the Zelari Defense Force, transmitting from Zelaria Prime. He began, his voice resonating through the crystal array. Our world is dying. An enemy we call the Void Swarm has invaded our system. They consume the life force of everything they touch. Our cities are falling. Our people are being drained of their very essence. The crystal array amplified his words, sending them racing across space at impossible speeds. In the background, alarms continued to sound as more sections of their world fell to the spreading darkness. We are a peaceful people. We have no weapons capable of fighting these creatures. Our defensive systems were designed to protect against conventional threats, not beings that feed on life itself. We have tried to negotiate, to understand what they want, but they do not communicate. They only consume. On the view screen behind him, satellite feeds showed the horrific reality of their situation. The Void Swarm creatures looked like living shadows with too many eyes, moving across the crystal landscape like a plague of darkness. Where they passed, the luminous crystal formations that powered Zelari civilization went dim and lifeless. To any civilization receiving this transmission, please understand that this threat will not stop with our world. The Void Swarm grows stronger with each planet they consume. They will spread throughout the galaxy unless they are stopped now. We do not ask for salvation for ourselves alone, but for all life in the galaxy. Zefka paused, looking around at his remaining officers. These brave Zelari had stayed at their posts even as death approached, determined to maintain their duties until the very end. They represented the best of their species, and soon they would all be gone. If any species exists that values life over profit, courage over calculation, we beg you to come to our aid. The coordinates of our world are attached to this transmission. We have perhaps days before our final defenses fall. After that, the Void Swarm will move to the next system, then the next, until all the light in the galaxy is extinguished. The crystal array pulsed with brilliant light as it launched the message into space. Across the galaxy, monitoring stations would receive the signal within hours. Most would file it away as another territorial dispute or resource conflict. But maybe, somewhere in the darkness, someone would understand what was really at stake. The signal reaches Earth Lieutenant. Sarah Martinez was halfway through her third cup of coffee with a deep space. Communication array at Luna Station began receiving something unusual. A massive dish, positioned on the dark side of Earth's moon, had been humanity's ear to the cosmos for the past 15 years. Most days brought routine signals, stellar radiation, pulsar emissions, and the occasional piece of space debris from long-dead civilizations. This was different. Captain Vasquez, "You need to see this," Sarah called across the monitoring station. The facility hummed with quiet activity. As dozens of technicians analyzed incoming data from across the electromagnetic spectrum, Captain Elena Vasquez set down her mission reports and walked over to Sarah's workstation. At 42, Vasquez had spent her entire adult life preparing for humanity's eventual contact with alien intelligence. She had studied 17 different theoretical communication protocols and could recognize patterns in languages that had never been spoken by human throats. "What do you have, Martinez?" she asked, leaning over the lieutenant's shoulder to examine the displays. "It's a transmission from beyond the Centauri system, definitely artificial origin. The signal pattern is complex, like it's carrying massive amounts of data. But here's the interesting part. It's being broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously, using what looks like dozens of different encoding methods." Vasquez felt her pulse quicken. Multiple encoding methods suggested the sender was trying to reach as many different types of receivers as possible. That implied a desperate need for the message to be understood by anyone who might receive it. "How long to run it through the translation matrix?" she asked. "Already started. The computer is comparing the patterns against every known communication protocol in our database. Should have preliminary results in 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like hours. Vasquez paced the monitoring station while her team worked to decode the alien message. She had spent years dreaming of this moment, first contact with another intelligent species. But as she watched the translation software struggle with the complex signal, she felt a growing sense of unease. There was something urgent about the transmission pattern, something that spoke of desperation rather than peaceful greeting. "Got it," Martinez announced, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and horror. "The translation confidence is 93%. Captain, you're going to want to sit down for this." Vasquez remained standing, her military training keeping her spine straight even as Martinez began reading the translated message. The words painted a picture of horror that made her blood run cold. An entire civilization facing extinction from creatures that fed on life itself. A peaceful species with no weapons capable of fighting back. A threat that would spread across the galaxy if not stopped. "Play the visual data," she ordered. The main display screen flickered to life, showing images transmitted along with the message. Vasquez watched in stunned silence as she saw a world of incredible beauty being consumed by living shadows. Crystal cities that sparkled like jewels were going dark as creatures of pure malevolence drained their light. In the distance, She could see Zelari civilians fleeing in panic, their crystalline forms glowing with terror. "My God," whispered Dr. James Chun, the station's xenobiology specialist. "If this is real, we're looking at genocide on a planetary scale." Vasquez studied the tactical data embedded in the transmission. The Zelari had provided detailed information about their world's location, their current defensive capabilities, and their estimates of how long they could hold out. The picture was grim. Without immediate assistance, an entire civilization would be extinct within days. "What's the distance to their system?" she asked. Martinez consulted her calculations. "Approximately 847 light years. At maximum burn with our fastest ships, it would take—" She paused, double-checking her math. 18 months to reach them." "Captain," Dr. Chun said quietly, "there's something else in the transmission. They've included detailed analysis of these void swarm creatures. If their data is accurate, these things don't just stop after consuming one world. They move to the next system, then the next. Eventually, they could reach Earth." The monitoring station fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about saving one alien species from extinction. It was about preventing a threat that could eventually consume every living world in the galaxy, including humanity's home. The decision 2 hours later, Captain Vasquez stood before the United Defense Council in Geneva, delivering the most important briefing of her career. The holographic displays around the conference room showed the translated Zelari message and the horrific images of their dying world. The faces of world leaders, military commanders, and scientists reflected the same mixture of fascination and horror she had felt upon first seeing the transmission. "The mathematical projections are clear," she continued, indicating the tactical analysis on the main screen. "If the void swarm continues expanding at their current rate, they will reach the outer human colonies within 50 to 70 years. Earth itself could be threatened within a century." General Patricia Armstrong, head of the Global Defense Initiative, leaned forward in her chair. "Captain, what you're suggesting is unprecedented. We've never sent human forces beyond our own system, let alone into combat against an unknown alien threat." "With respect, General, we've never faced a threat like this before either," Vasquez replied. "Every simulation our computers have run reaches the same conclusion. The void swarm will not stop with the Zelari. They will continue consuming worlds until they encounter something capable of stopping them." Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's leading expert on theoretical faster-than-light travel, spoke up from her position at the Science Council table. "Captain Vasquez, even if we decided to launch a rescue mission, our current technology cannot reach the Zelari system in time to save them. Our fastest experimental drives might cut the travel time to 8 months, but that's still far too long." Vasquez had anticipated this objection. "Dr. Tanaka, what if we didn't need to travel at light speed?" The room erupted in confused murmurs as Vasquez activated a new display showing theoretical engine configurations. For the past 6 months, the Advanced Propulsion Laboratory has been working on quantum fold technology. The theory suggests we could create temporary folds in spacetime, allowing near-instantaneous travel across vast distances. Dr. Tanaka's eyes widened. "The quantum fold project is purely theoretical. We've never even attempted a test with an unmanned probe." "But the math works," Vasquez pressed. "Dr. Harrison's team believes they can have a prototype drive ready for testing within 72 hours. If we combine that with our most advanced combat vessels and volunteer crews, we might be able to reach the Zelari in time." The room fell silent as the council members considered the implications. They were being asked to approve humanity's first interstellar military mission, using untested technology to save aliens they had never met from creatures they didn't understand. The risks were enormous, the chances of success uncertain at best. President Maria Santos of the Global Federation stood slowly, her voice carrying the authority of her office. Captain Vasquez, if we approve this mission and it fails, we could lose our most advanced ships and our best people. If we don't approve it, we might be condemning not just the Zellari, but potentially every living world in the galaxy. Yes, Madam President, that's exactly the choice we face. Santos looked around the room at her fellow leaders, seeing her own thoughts reflected in their faces. This decision would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Would they be the species that reached out to help others in desperate need, or the ones who calculated the odds and chose safety over compassion? General Armstrong, how quickly can we assemble a volunteer fleet? The general consulted her tactical display. We can have 12 of our most advanced vessels ready for departure within 96 hours. The crews would have to volunteer for what might be a suicide mission. Dr. Tanaka, what are the real chances the quantum fold technology will work? The scientist hesitated before answering. In controlled laboratory conditions, the mathematical models suggest a 70% probability of success. But we're talking about folding space across nearly 1,000 light years. The margin for error is significant. President Santos walked to the large window overlooking Lake Geneva, where the evening lights of the city reflected on the water. Somewhere out in the darkness, beyond Earth's atmosphere, an entire civilization was dying, while creatures of pure malevolence prepared to spread their hunger across the galaxy. She turned back to face the council. The Zellari message said they were a peaceful people with no weapons capable of fighting these creatures. But we are not peaceful people. Humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that would have ended most civilizations. We have learned to fight when fighting means survival. The president's voice grew stronger as she continued. If these void swarm creatures think they can consume world after world without resistance, they have never encountered humans. Captain Vasquez, you have authorization to assemble your volunteer fleet. Dr. Tanaka, you have unlimited resources to complete the Quantum Fold project. General Armstrong, prepare our best weapons and our finest warriors. President Santos looked directly into the camera that would broadcast her next words to the world. Today, humanity takes its first step as protectors of life in the galaxy. We go not because the odds are in our favor, but because it's the right thing to do. We go because someone cried for help in the darkness, and humans do not ignore such calls. Preparing for the unknown, the next 72 hours transformed Earth's military infrastructure, unlike anything since the Third World War. At Luna Station, teams of engineers worked around the clock to install prototype quantum fold drives on humanity's most advanced warships. The USS Defiant, humanity's newest battlecruiser, would serve as the flagship for the hastily assembled rescue fleet. Asterisk Captain Vasquez found herself promoted to Admiral in a ceremony that lasted exactly 3 minutes. There was no time for tradition when an entire species was counting down their final hours of existence. She stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching through the viewports as 11 other vessels took positions in formation around her ship. The fleet represented the best humanity had to offer. The heavy cruiser Manchester carried the most advanced energy weapons in Earth's arsenal. The stealth destroyers Shanghai and Lagos could disappear from sensors while delivering devastating surprise attacks. The assault carrier New York held 2 full battalions of human Marines, trained in zero-gravity combat, but the most important vessel might have been the smallest. The science ship Discovery carried Dr. Chun and his xenobiology team, along with every piece of information humanity had managed to gather about the void swarm creatures. If they were going to fight an enemy that fed on life force itself, they needed to understand exactly what that meant. Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth Command, reported Communications Officer Kim Park. President Santos appeared on the main view screen, speaking from the Global Defense Council chambers. Admiral Vasquez, the entire world is watching. You carry with you not just the hopes of humanity, but our promise to the galaxy that Earth stands with those who cannot stand alone. Vasquez felt the weight of history in the president's words. Win or lose, this mission would define how other species viewed humanity for generations to come. They could be remembered as heroes who rushed to help the innocent, or as fools who threw away their lives for strangers they had never met. Asterisk. Dr. Tanaka, status report on the quantum fold drives, she ordered. The scientist's voice carried from the Discovery's bridge. All drives show green across the board, Admiral. The fold calculations are complete. We should be able to reach the Zelari system in approximately 6 hours. 6 hours to travel nearly 1,000 light years. 6 hours to reach a dying world and face an enemy that had consumed half a civilization. 6 hours to discover whether humanity was ready to stand among the stars as protectors of life itself. Asterisk all ships. This is Admiral Vasquez, she announced across the fleet communication system. In a few hours, we will drop out of fold space in an alien system under attack by creatures we've never seen. We will be fighting alongside people we've never met to protect a world we've never visited. Some of you might be wondering why we're taking such risks for strangers. She paused, looking around at her bridge crew. These men and women had volunteered, knowing they might never see Earth again. They had families, friends, and futures waiting for them back home. But they had also understood that some things were more important than personal safety. We're going because when someone cries for help in the darkness, humans answer. We're going because the strong have a responsibility to protect the weak. We're going because if we don't stop this threat now, it will eventually reach our own world and threaten everyone we love. The fleet began moving toward the jump coordinates, 12 ships carrying humanity's first warriors into the galactic community. Behind them, Earth watched and waited, knowing that their children were about to face the unknown in defense of life itself. All ships report ready for quantum fold, announced Lieutenant Martinez. Vasquez took one last look at Earth through the viewports, a blue marble that had given birth to a species capable of crossing impossible distances to help strangers in need. Whatever happened in the next few hours, humanity would face it with courage, ingenuity, and the determination that had carried them from caves to the stars. Execute quantum fold. Take us to the Zelari. The universe twisted around them as space folded, carrying 12 human ships toward a dying world and a battle that would determine the fate of civilizations across the galaxy. In the darkness between stars, hope traveled at impossible speeds, powered by humanity's refusal to let the innocent suffer alone. Asterisk. Into the void storm arrival at Zelaria Prime the universe snapped back into focus as the human fleet dropped out of quantum fold space at the edge of the Zelari system. Admiral Vasquez gripped her command chair as the Defiance inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the violent transition from folded space back to normal physics. Around her, the bridge crew worked frantically to bring sensors online and assess their situation. Fold complete. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Martinez, her voice shaking slightly from the stress of humanity's first interstellar jump. All 12 ships have successfully translated. We are at the designated coordinates, approximately 2 million kilometers from Zelaria Prime. Vasquez felt a mixture of relief and terror. The experimental quantum fold technology had worked, carrying them across nearly 1,000 light years in just under 6 hours. But now they were farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled, facing an enemy they didn't understand in a system they had never seen. Sensors online, announced Tactical Officer Commander Sarah Blake. Admiral, you need to see this. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Zelaria Prime hung before them like a dying jewel, its once brilliant crystal surface now half covered in spreading darkness. The planet's natural luminescence, visible even from space, flickered weakly, where the crystal formations were still alive. But across vast continents, the light was going out forever. "My God," whispered Dr. Chan from his position at the science station. "It's worse than the transmissions showed." The darkness wasn't empty space or simple shadow. It moved with purpose, flowing across the crystal landscape like living oil. Occasionally, the sensors detected brief flashes of unnatural light within the dark zones. But these quickly disappeared, consumed by the spreading malevolence. "Admiral, I'm detecting multiple ship signatures in orbit around the planet," Commander Blake reported. "Some appear to be Zalari vessels, but they're barely registering on sensors. Their energy output is minimal. And the others?" Vasquez asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Unknown configuration, but they're definitely not Zalari. The energy signatures are ... strange. They don't match any known propulsion or power systems in our database." On the tactical display, Vasquez could see the situation clearly. 36 Zalari ships hung in orbit like dying insects, their once bright hulls now dim and lifeless. Surrounding them were perhaps 20 vessels that looked more like living shadows than constructed spacecraft. These void swarm ships moved with organic fluidity, occasionally extending tendrils of darkness toward the Zalari vessels. "Communications. Try to raise the Zalari ships on the frequency we used to receive their distress call," she ordered. The bridge fell silent as they waited for a response. Finally, a weak signal crackled through the speakers, carrying the harmonic tones of Zalari speech that their translation software had learned to interpret. "Unknown vessels. This is Commander Zithka of the Zalari Defense Force. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. If you have come to help us, you may already be too late." Vasquez felt her heart clench at the despair in the alien commander's voice. But she also heard something else, a spark of hope that someone had finally answered their call. "Commander Zethka, this is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Force. We received your distress transmission and have come to offer assistance. Please transmit your current tactical situation." The pause that followed lasted nearly a minute. When Zethka spoke again, his voice carried amazement and gratitude that transcended species barriers. Asterisk, Earthships? You traveled from beyond the outer rim to help us? But your world is not even part of the galactic community. Why would you risk yourselves for strangers? Because it was the right thing to do, Commander, Vasquez replied simply. Now tell us how we can help. Meeting the last defenders an hour later, Admiral Vasquez found herself aboard the Zalari command ship, Luminous Hope, walking through corridors that seemed to be made of living crystal. The ship's walls pulsed with soft inner light, and she could hear a faint harmonic resonance that the Zalari used for both power generation and communication. Commander Zithka waited for her in what served as their operations center, a spherical chamber where crystalline displays showed tactical information in three-dimensional holographic form. The Zalari commander was unlike anything in human experience. His body appeared to be made of translucent crystal that sparkled with internal light, constantly shifting through subtle color changes that seemed to reflect his emotional state. Admiral Vasquez, I cannot express how grateful we are for your arrival, Zethka said, his words translated by the portable communication device her team had brought. But I must warn you, these creatures you have come to fight are unlike any enemy your species has likely encountered. Tell me about them, Vasquez said, settling into a chair that had been hastily modified to accommodate human physiology. Zethkai manipulated the crystal displays, bringing up detailed recordings of the Void Swarm's attacks. We call them the Void Swarm because they seem to emerge from the empty spaces between stars. But they are not truly creatures of void. They are parasites that feed on life energy itself. The display showed horrific images of Zalari cities under attack, The swarm creatures looked like living shadows with multiple eyes that burned with malevolent intelligence. They flowed across the crystal landscape like liquid darkness, and wherever they passed, the luminous formations that powered Zelari civilization went dark forever. Our weapons are useless against them, Zethkay continued, his crystalline form dimming with sorrow. Energy beams pass through them without effect. Physical projectiles have no impact. They drain power from our ships and cities just by approaching them. In 3 days, they have consumed half our world. Dr. Chun, who had accompanied Vasquez to study the alien threat, leaned forward intently. Commander, do these creatures show any vulnerability at all? Any frequency of energy or type of weapon that has had even minimal effect? Zethka's form brightened slightly. There is one thing. When we overloaded our crystal resonators to maximum output, the creatures retreated temporarily. The feedback caused them pain, but it also destroyed the resonators. We cannot sustain such energy output for more than a few minutes. Vasquez studied the tactical data, her mind racing through possibilities. Humans had come from a world that taught them to find weaknesses in any enemy, to adapt and overcome regardless of the odds. The Void Swarm might be immune to conventional weapons, but everything had vulnerabilities. Asterisk. Dr. Chun, what's your assessment? She asked. The xenobiologist consulted his portable scanner, which had been analyzing the swarm creatures through the ship's sensors. If Commander Zethka is correct, these entities feed on life energy, what we might call bioelectric fields. Every living thing generates such fields, and highly technological civilizations like the Zelari would be particularly attractive because of their crystal technology. But humans are different, Vasquez said, beginning to understand. Exactly. We evolved on a world with a different electromagnetic environment. Our bioelectric patterns might not be as appetizing to these creatures. More importantly, our technology doesn't rely on the kind of crystal energy systems they seem designed to drain. Commander Zethka's form pulsed with sudden hope. Are you suggesting your species might be naturally resistant to their feeding abilities? It's possible, Dr. Chun replied. We won't know for certain until we test it in combat. But human biology has evolved to be remarkably adaptable. We might be the first species they've encountered that doesn't fit their feeding pattern. Vasquez stood up, her mind already shifting into combat planning mode. Commander Zethka, I need complete tactical data on their attack patterns, their current positions on your planet's surface, and the status of your remaining population centers. If we're going to save your world, we need to act fast. The Zelari commander began transmitting data to the portable displays her team had brought. The information painted a grim picture. Over 60% of Zelaria Prime was now under swarm control, with the creatures continuing to spread toward the remaining population centers. Millions of Zelari civilians were trapped in crystal cities that were rapidly losing power as the swarm drained their energy sources. How many of your people are still alive? Vasquez asked quietly. Perhaps 4 million, Zethka replied, his voice carrying the weight of unimaginable loss. From a population of nearly 12 million. And the number drops every hour the swarm advances. Vasquez felt the familiar cold determination that had made her one of Earth's finest military commanders. 4 million lives hanging in the balance, facing extinction from creatures that fed on the very essence of living worlds. But humans had faced impossible odds before and found ways to win. Commander, gather your remaining military leaders. We're Asterisk.